Okay, I think I am live here. So what I wanted to do was to come on. I don't know why my screen looks like that. Okay, okay, there we go. All right, so I just wanted to come on quickly, and I wanted to do like a little wrap of the impeachment hearings, right? So here's some of the things I found to be, nonsense, right? The phone call. The phone call bothers me because we have Holmes saying he overhears part of the conversation. There are two parts to that conversation. The first part of the conversation is about Ukraine and whether or not they're going to do the investigation allegedly. But what he says first bothers me because he says Holmes says as he's across from Sunderland, Sunderland winks. He just like reacted like the phone, the voice, President Trump's voice was coming through so powerful that he couldn't, take it. He had to jump so loud. It triggered him, right? But from there, he goes on and he gets into the conversation as far as to what he heard, right? What he heard President Trump say. He acknowledges that he doesn't hear the second part of the conversation about ASAP Rocky. He has to read that part. He doesn't remember that. Okay, as offensive as Sunderland's statements were, um, he couldn't remember any of those statements about the rapper ASAP Rocky, but he heard everything clear. Another thing that bothers me is he said he didn't understand, he didn't know whether Sunderland had adjusted the volume of his phone. Is that would allow him to feel more comfortable to continue the conversation without having, President Trump come over the phone too loud. So if he turned the phone down to adjust the volume to be suitable to his liking, then it would be even harder for you to hear the conversation. Okay? Here's what we didn't know, what I would have liked someone to ask, but I realize this is not a real courtroom, so they're not going to set the scene for us. Okay? Usually a jury or people who are, going to judge something and make a decision on something, they set the scene for the jury, right? And we're the jury because we're observing. They're allowing us to observe it. So our opinion matters. So as far as the scene goes, the layout of the restaurant, now he took us as far as them being out on a terrace, but he didn't say whether there was whether the restaurant was full, was it preserved just for you guys to come in, or were there other, patrons in the restaurant? Was there music in the background? Because usually when you go to the fancier, nicer restaurants, there's always some type of classical music playing in the background. And what about the other staffers? They were just sitting there stoically. They weren't having conversations. You weren't talking to them. You were just sitting there with appetizers across from you and just listening to the conversation. So you were just staring at Sunderland. So, that kind of bothered me as well. Also, I want to go back and I want to talk about omissions, right? Because both Volker and Morrison omitted that there wasn't any bribery, there wasn't any quid pro quo. Oh God, I've said it so much. And there was the thing about the aid. Excuse me. The thing about the aid was Ukraine didn't know anything about the aid being withheld into the political article leak. So in order to really tie all of this up, we need the whistleblower. We need to hear from the whistleblower because I believe the whistleblower is the one who took the story to Politico. And then now, after really listening to everybody's testimony, a lot of this is like I've said before. They, the Democratic Party and different, ambassadors and different people in different positions handle things in a certain way. Like they're like, I don't know how you want to say the difference between an uptown girl and a downtown girl, or uptown girl and a downtown, guy, or whatever. Like they handle things differently. And a lot of this is about the way our president chooses to handle things to get things done, which he's proven to be successful in. But a lot of it is just they don't like his tone. Now, they already acknowledged that aid was already set up. and it was already going to go out. So why would President Trump turn around and renege on all of this work that everybody has done? He wanted to make sure what? He kept up his part. That Zelensky, President Zelensky of Ukraine, was going to keep up his part in attacking corruption because it's pay for play there. And that's not fair to the Ukrainian people. It's not fair to, if you set up a business, you have to pay out money to this one and that one, and you have to do this and pay bribes off to this one and that one. That's not happiness and freedom. And it's amazing to me that the Democrats are going so hard for it because they try to shut, business down, and they try to make us feel in America that corporate is so bad and that you shouldn't own business, and that if you, you know, become wealthy and obtain some type of status that you're a wicked person or whatever. So they personify that message over here, but they are concerned about the Ukrainians being happy, and being able to develop businesses, which I find it forced. But I would like that for the Ukrainians too, and for Black people in America and for everybody else. I want people to be happy and be able to start businesses and not have, any obstructions. And so did our president. And that's why, what happened happened. But if you want to talk about quid pro quo, they don't want to investigate the investigation that was already going on. They're trying to say that President Trump wanted to have an investigation done on Joe Biden and Burisma or Burisma or whatever to help his political campaign. But we know that President Trump can run on what he's done already and what he's doing. People are working, they're a lot happier because they're making more, a few more dollars. He's helping out our farmers, cutting breaks for them and deals. And he's doing a lot for a lot of people. So there are more people that are happy than dissatisfied, in all honesty. And he's looking out for Americans, something we've all been saying for a long time. It's so funny to me how everybody flipped all of a sudden when we've all been saying, hey, this is too much of this, and why can't they just fix this and get this under control? And yeah, that's a problem or whatever. And then when somebody steps in to do it, this is what they get met with. Obstruction, the Mueller report, Russia collusion, now the impeachment, when all he's doing is what he said he was going to do and what any American president should do, and that's put America first. Okay, so like I said, you already have them admitting. None of them are saying that President Trump was like really gonna withhold this aid from them. They just didn't understand what was going on. Fiona Williams, Dr. Fiona Williams, Yanovich, they didn't understand what was going on, and they were, kept out for a reason. And look what they did. They got together and they, somebody decided to go to this one and report this one to that one and that one and this one, instead of just trying to get in front of the president and really express their concerns. And maybe they would have been brought in. But they had to make sure there wasn't any leaks. And what happened? The leak went to political, and we still don't know who the whistleblower is. That's very important, knowing who the whistleblower is, because sometimes people have agendas. And if we can prove that this person has an agenda, then they have no validity at all. Because you started all of this for nothing. There was no quid pro quo. The president wanted Zelensky to do the right thing. That's all he wanted. You have Sunderland saying, oh, yeah, there was a quid pro quo. That's an assumption. That's implied. Because he didn't know everything that was going on. As much as they're saying that he knew, he didn't know. The aid got released, and he was clear. Zelensky was clear. They said this guy, yeah, he's going to up and up. He definitely wants to fight corruption. He was clear. And then they had a meeting, I believe, President Trump and Zelensky in September. I think they had a meeting. So they did ended up having a meeting. The president just wanted to make sure that he was not turning over aid like the Democrats have done, just giving aid to people like in Guatemala and people in Venezuela, and then these people having to come to America because they're saying they're under attack. Meanwhile, we're providing aid to them without any type of stipulations. And according to I don't know if it was Lieutenant Vitamin, Vitamin. I forget. I have a ton of notes here, but they were just saying that there's always been stipulation on Ukrainian aid. Okay, so let me just share my screen right quickly so you can just look at the conversation. Yep. And here it is, what I was actually talking about.
Trump. And I'm going to ask you a little bit about the lead up to that conversation. Before the lunch that you described, you said that you accompanied Ambassador Sondland, Volker, and Taylor to a meeting with President Zelensky. Is that right?
That's correct.
And you took notes at that meeting?
Yes, sir.
And you reviewed those notes before you came here to testify today?
Yes.
And they were helpful to refresh your recollection as to what happened. Is that right?
Yes.
During that meeting, President Zelensky said that on his phone call with President Trump the previous day, that 3 times President Trump had mentioned sensitive issues. Did you understand what President Zelensky was referring to when he said the sensitive issues?
I couldn't be sure what he was referring
When had been given some authority over Ukraine policy from the president?
to. We understood that he had been told
Oh, wait, hold on for a minute.
to work with Mr. Giuliani. Yes.
During that meeting, President Zelensky said that on his phone call with President Trump the previous day, that 3 times President Trump had mentioned
The restaurant has sort of glass doors that open onto a terrace.
investigations
Okay,
with
so
Mr.
yeah.
Yermak. Did Ambassador Sondland tell you at all what they discussed?
He did not.
Now, after this meeting with Mr. Yermak, you went to lunch. And can you just describe where you were sitting at the restaurant?
Yes, sir. The restaurant has sort of glass doors that open onto a terrace. And we were at the first tables on the terrace, so immediately outside of the interior of the restaurant. The doors were all wide open. There was tables, table for 4, all I recall it being 2 tables for 2 pushed together. In any case, it was quite a wide table. And the table was set with sort of a table runner down the middle. I was directly across from Ambassador Sondland. We were close enough that we could, share an appetizer between us, and then the 2 staffers were off to our right at this next table.
Now, you said that at some point Ambassador Sondland pulled out his cell phone and called President Trump. This was an unsecure cell phone, is that right?
Yes, sir.
In the middle of a restaurant in Kyiv?
Yes.
Now, you said that you were able to hear President Trump's voice through the receiver. How were you able to hear if it was not on speakerphone?
It was several things. It was quite loud when the president came on, quite distinctive. I believe Ambassador Sondland also said yesterday he often speaks very loudly over the phone, and I certainly experienced that. When the president came on, he sort of winced and held the phone away from his ear like this. And he did that for the first couple exchanges. I don't know if he then turned the volume down, if he got used to it, if the president's moderated his volume, I don't know. But that's how I was able to hear it.
And so you were able to hear some of what President Trump said to President Zelensky, is that right?
The first portion of the conversation, yes.
And what did you hear President Trump say to, I'm sorry, not President Zelensky, to Ambassador Sondland?
What I hear
the president say to Ambassador Sondland?
Yeah, he clarified whether he was in Ukraine or not, and he said, yes, I'm here in Ukraine. And then Ambassador Sondland said he loves your ass, and if you want, he said he can do the investigation.
So you heard President Trump ask Ambassador Sondland, is he going to do the investigation?
Yes, sir.
What was Ambassador Sondland's response?
He said, oh yeah, he's going to do it. He'll do anything you ask.
And was that the end of the Ukraine portion of the conversation?
Yes.
Afterwards, you described a follow-on conversation that you had with Ambassador Sondland, where you asked him, I think.
Okay, so that's what I really wanted to get at right there, where he said he just heard the first portion of the conversation. I would like to know what changed. that he could no longer hear President Trump, and now he could only hear Sunderland. What changed in the room that now you couldn't hear? Or was he sitting there so focused on the conversation, or did Sunderland, um, I don't know, like turn on a speaker or whatever? I don't know. Was he close to him? It just doesn't make sense that he heard only one part of the conversation. And then there was something else that bothered me is him relaying or relating the cell phone as a piece, an earpiece. Nobody says that. Nobody says that. I don't hear anybody relating to their cell as like having an earpiece. Usually, when people say earpiece, they're referring to the Bluetooth that goes in your ear. Now, I thought I overheard him say earpiece, and then he corrected himself, and counsel kind of led as well because he was like he said receiver. We heard him inject that. He said receiver, stressing that receiver. And then he said, yeah, the earpiece for the receiver or whatever. Then he added that on. So it seems like he was trying to relate to a Bluetooth, And I know sometimes you can hear off the cell phone or whatever, but the person has to be extremely, extremely loud. And if you can't, if he jumped back, he obviously couldn't take that kind of pitch in his ear. So instantly, you will be lowering your phone, making it harder for someone to hear. So I think a lot of assumptions was going on. And not to repeat myself, but people made up, how they felt about President Trump and how he wasn't handling things, I guess, eloquently enough for them in a manner in which they would, handle these things. But unfortunately, they weren't elected into, presidency. He was. So you kind of have to go along with how the president is running things. There's no corruption. There wasn't anything, underhanded going on. So I don't know. I found that very interesting. Those are my points about the scene. Nobody said the scene. I would like to know more about the scene. I would like for somebody to ask Sunderland or find out whether he had an earpiece in or not. That wasn't asked to him. I would like to know more from Sunderland about that. The setup, in the room. Was there music? I would like to know from both of them. What was the scene like in that restaurant? And you had a bottle of wine, I believe they had some wine. I don't know. So yeah, I did make a statement. Like Yovanovitch is part of the swamp. I don't know that to be fact. I wanted to look in what President Trump was referring to when he referenced Somalia. So I'll probably look into that, my own leisure. But this, like I said before, they really don't have anything at all. They don't have any high crimes. They don't have any bribery. There was no bribery. The bribery was done on their behalf, and they're doing this to cover it up. This whole or part of this corruption thing resulted from what Joe Biden and his son were doing. And even other members in the cabinet, I guess Obama's cabinet, were concerned about the optics of this and what's going on. It just didn't look right to a lot of people, but nobody really said anything. And then they let this guy, the former vice president, go off on a tangent about how he got 6 hours to get this guy fired, or he's not gonna give the $1 billion in aid. So that's outright bribery. That's outright um, quid pro quo, outright, and that's on tape. So you can't deny that. And there's, it seems to me as if they're scrubbing things because different articles are getting harder to find. And on the Serious Fraud Office website, they tell you if you can find the case, because it takes a lot to find through what was going on with Makola. There's a guy named Makola here. I think I forget his name. If it's Zolinsky or I don't know. You could go back and look in the video, but they had put a freeze on his accounts, all of his accounts and everything, and they didn't tell us why the investigations kind of dropped. They just said, oh well, they couldn't prove certain things. So what he did, as soon as they lift the freeze on his account, he just transferred his money over to like another part of the country or something like that, or whatever. And I guess it was just business as usual for him. But I would like to know what discovery did the lawyer have, the prosecutor have, Shokin, whatever this did he have. They're supposed to be bringing him forth, and I'm very interested in that because that links all of this up. Our president told you he was going to drain the swamp, and this was a very big part of that. If any U.S. official or government official does anything, in another country, um, especially dealing with a corrupt country, that's bad on us. That means that we're okay with corruption or whatever. And if we're not for corruption, then we cannot have our senators and vice presidents and anybody else that's representing government over in other countries conducting, businesses for personal gain, for their family's personal gain, and backing our money, using our money as a cushion, using American money as a cushion. Like if this thing falls apart, well, we got some money over here from America that'll cushion us, so don't worry about it. We'll just swipe it from them and make them feel bad about it, and they'll just pay for it. And this is what's been going on. A lot of us are tired of it. The Democrats obviously don't seem to get or nor understand what's going on around them. But this is people tired of being silenced to just liberal opinions. And another thing, this video is probably going on kind of long here, but it's another thing, and it was quite funny. Quite funny. I hope I can find it. I have a million notes. Oh, this is funny. Now, they want us to believe that President Zelensky was supposed to go to CNN. CNN, one of the most liberal news outlets there is. They love the Obama administration. They put out the red carpet for him, champagne, croissants, everything. So they wanted us to believe, and it could be true, but I just find this ridiculous, that the Ukrainian president, President-elect Zelensky, was supposed to go on CNN and he was supposed to announce his investigation of a Democratic former vice president on CNN and let the world know that he was investigating Democrat former vice president from the Obama administration, that he was investigating Burisma on CNN. Okay, now if you don't find that hilarious, I don't know. CNN wouldn't even do a story like that. And they would, before they did a story like that, they would find a way to spin it and put something out negative before they did a story. Like there's no way in the world CNN would take that story. Now, had they had said Hannity, he was gonna meet with Hannity, or who's that guy that called everybody a pinhead, but he's a pinhead, O'Reilly. Had they say he's gonna sit down with O'Reilly and do this interview or something like that, maybe. Maybe you would have got away with that one. You would have been able to put, but CNN, the most liberalist. Oh my God, I just thought that was funny. I really thought that was funny. Yeah, so I talked about the earpiece. I talked about the setting. Those are questions that you should be thinking about. How I think about you being in a restaurant and somebody being on a cell phone, and there's, like I said, music in the background, other people chit chatting, and so you think about that, and you think about the fact that all of them said that they don't believe Trump had like evil intentions, and he just wanted to see people in Ukraine die. None of them felt like that was his intent. They didn't know. They all were like, I don't know what's going on. Why are we doing this? They were upset because they're used to handling things a certain way, and they didn't understand why our president was handling things the way he did. I think a lot of people are scared of Giuliani. I'm not a fan of, a big fan of Giuliani, but I will tell you that when it comes time to bringing down crime, and when it comes time to like, what do they call that? Organized crime. He's really good at that. He brought down, Gotti, a fraction of the New York mob scene, if you want to say that or whatever. He did that. People hate him, whatever. It is what it is with that. But yeah, he's good at that. So I don't know if this corrupt picture they're trying to really paint of him is 100%. Like he's like they're trying to paint like he has some business endeavors and like financial or whatever. But I don't see that as being a thing more versus what he's accomplished under being a prosecutor and what they know he can achieve and his skills in that set in the legal set. I see more of a fear because it's like they all want us to know like we hate Giuliani. It's like yeah, a lot of people hate Giuliani, but a lot of people do hate him for the way he was good on ground. I don't hate the guy, but I dislike the fact that he allowed police to do certain things to young black youth in the city without reprimanding them, without saying exclude these people and really just the criminals, you bust their ass, but don't put your hands on the youth out here. So that's where I had a problem with. But I cannot lie and say that he didn't turn our city around, and that's going to have to be done again. Because if you look on the news, we're always in the news. New York is in the news, the Bronx, um, in Harlem, and everybody's battling. I don't know what for, but yeah, that's that's kind of what's going on here. So yeah, he is known for that. So that might be some fear on their behalf or whatever. So I think I kind of did a good roundabout wrap of my views anyway of what's going on with this thing and just try to bring awareness to it. You come back and watch the video if you haven't. It's very interesting to listen to the questions, see how counsel can be very leading. The Democratic counsel is very leading at times, and you see the difference between them and the Republicans who are kind of just asking the questions, just trying to get to the bottom of the truth. There's really not any or to the truth. There really isn't any of this theatrics. You see a lot of theatrics from the Democratic side, So I don't know. I just hope that people make the right decision and support Donald Trump, no matter what party you in. If you're a Democrat, you should vote for Donald Trump, and if you're independent, you should vote for Donald Trump, and if you're in the Republican Party, you should vote for Donald Trump. If you really care about this quote unquote democracy and you really care about this quote unquote freedom and you really care about, or you're happy that you're an American and you wouldn't want to be, because a lot of people say, I wouldn't want to live nowhere else in the world. I'm so happy I'm American. You'll travel and go around the world. But when you come back, you like, woo, I'm happy I'm an American because I don't want to have to go through this and that. So you really do appreciate all of the privileges here, even though we do have problems here that we have to deal with. But if you appreciate that, you'll do the right thing come 2020. You'll see the Democratic Party for all of the scheming and scamming and flim flamming they've been doing for these past 3.5 years. All of these made up fairy tales because they don't like the guy. It's okay not to like somebody, but it's not okay to make things up about somebody who's doing a good job in representing the country and taking on issues that they talk about during election time, but they never do anything about. Okay, so I'm Ray Ray, guys. I like to bring awareness through conversation in hopes that it sparks change, and I am out.